Hello, welcome back to the Ironside. Man City have finally made their bid. 90 million for Declan Rice. It's now been rejected. Arsenal are due to make their third bid any minute now. Links with Banana growing pace and telling us that he wants to come to West Ham now. Dennis Zakaria links there as well. Harvey Barnes. We're going to talk about all of that stuff today here on the Ironside. So stick around. We're going to jump straight into it. But if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button and let's go. Right, so the long-awaited bid for Declan Rice from Man City came in late last night. 10 p.m. roughly, the bid was submitted and received by West Ham. It was £80 million up front and then 10 million in add-ons over the next 2 years. From what I've read and what I've found out, the add-ons were much more realistic than Arsenal's. Based off of Man City, they can pretty much say what they want because it's going to happen. So if they were to put in something like Champions League winning clauses, it's likely we're going to get the payment because it's likely they'll win it again. Same as the Premier League. Whereas with Arsenal, this is the difference. They've not won the league in however long, I don't know off the top of my head, ages. Never won the Champions League. So if they're putting add-ons like that into the deal, I can see why they were rebuffed so quickly. That being said, I woke up this morning to the news that the bid has been rejected. So the bid got rejected from West Ham. So for all their flaws and all the times we as West Ham fans have moaned about Sullivan and the board, they're playing, as much as we want to see this saga dealt with and over sooner rather than later, they're dealing with this very well. They stuck to their guns. They said £100 million minimum and we'll accept it. No one's hit that price mark yet, so fair play to them. They've rejected it. I was worried that we'd accept that bid, and I say worried. Looking back now, I was worried that we was gonna accept it, but at the time I thought just get over and done with. He wants to go, get him out so we can get some deals over the line. The reason that this is winding so many people up is not only because of the mass hysteria on Twitter between Arsenal and West Ham fans about what's going on, is because we want replacements in now. It's only June. We've got a long time left in the window. There is more than enough time to get replacements in, albeit it's going to have to be 2 replacements because, like I've said before, Rice is a hybrid player. You're never gonna fill his void with one player unless you pay hundreds of millions, which we're not going to do because we can't. But saying that, if we just rewind this right back, I tweeted this out yesterday and I still stand by it. Why are we in a position where our best players want to leave? Now, I understand that we're not the biggest club in England. We're not fighting for titles and Champions League places. But why aren't we? We have the 4th richest owners in the Premier League. We have a massive stadium. We have a massive fan base, and we're from the capital. There's no reason why we shouldn't be where Tottenham have been for the last 10 years. There's no reason. Now, I know Tottenham haven't won anything, but they have been in and around Champions League football. They have been in and around title chases once or twice. They should have won it the year Leicester won it. They threw it away. I say they threw it away. They didn't throw it away. They were, for large parts of the season, especially towards the end, the only team really challenging Leicester for that title. So this is what really winds me up, is that we should be higher up in the table. We should be challenging these things. Poor decisions from the board at times have led to us being this mediocre team that's now seen as a selling club, and that's what we are. We have to accept that, and if we weren't a selling club, Declan Rice wouldn't be going. In this period of time between us lifting the trophy and his inevitable sale, which hasn't happened yet, we are in a position where we could have slapped a offer on the table. I know Rice has said he wants to leave. I know he's been promised he can leave. But there's nothing stopping us offering him 250 grand a week, and then put clauses into the contract. Like, we're being too nice and we're too negative with our approach. We should be a bigger team. We should be pushing for Champions League football. We should be 100% competing for Europa League football, and we have a small mentality. I think a large portion of our fan base has fallen into that category as well. And with the acceptance that Declan Rice needs to go after bigger and better things. And he does. But that's because we've created this bed that we have to lie in where we're a mediocre team, which we shouldn't be. And now moving forward, I want us to build something for the future and some sustainability rather than getting the odd Dimitri Payet or Declan Rice coming through the ranks. We should be able to build a squad of players that if one player leaves, it doesn't affect the whole ethos of the team, because we're a big enough team to do that. We've just won a European trophy. I don't care what anyone says about being a Mickey Mouse trophy or whatever. We've still won a European trophy, which only a handful of English clubs have done. So that's my little rant out of the way. We shouldn't be selling Declan Rice, period, is basically what I'm saying. But back to what we were actually talking about. So Man City have had their bid rejected. I assume they'll come in with another bid. But before that happens, I'm expecting Arsenal to come in with their third bid, which will be, it has to be higher now than what Man City just offered, which was obviously 80 plus 10. I could see Arsenal coming in. Last bid was 75 plus 15 in add-ons. I can see them coming in. Their first bid, was 80 plus 10 in add-ons, or was it 15 in add-ons, whatever it was. But the structure of the deal was only 13 million up front. So that the reason that was rebuffed and why Man City's offer was better than Arsenal's first is because it was £80 million up front from Man City, whereas Arsenal were only offering 13.3, and for the next 6 seasons we were getting an increment payment of 13.3 million. We want money up front. Now we still want 100 million, so whichever team gets to that mark first and has the most money up front is going to be the team that gets accepted. The best scenario we can hope for as West Ham fans, for the majority of West Ham fans, like, I don't care particularly where he goes. I'd rather him go to Man City because it means he's going to go and win what I think he probably deserves. If he goes to Arsenal, I think there's still a load of question marks over whether they'll be quite where last season led us to believe. So we want, for me and the majority of the fans, we want Man City to come in with a bid that reaches the £100 million mark. But I can see Arsenal's next bid being around 85 million up front and then 10 in add-ons. So again, that's below our benchmark, which I'd assume the board will reject. But who knows? They might be thinking at this point we might just accept the deal, just get it out of the way. But the next offer that Man City come in with, I do expect to meet the £100 million criteria. It's just dependent on whether Arsenal get their bid accepted before that. Because I do believe that Arsenal's next bid will probably be their last one. You see this a lot of times with teams. 3 bids and then they're out. That being said, I think Arsenal will probably do enough to get over the line because they really want Declan Rice. They made it abundantly clear he's their number one choice in that position. They haven't got any alternatives. Lavia is to come in and play as a squad player or alongside him. It isn't instead of Declan Rice. Same as Caicedo, who they've now pulled out of. That was to play alongside Declan Rice, not instead of Declan Rice. So I do expect Arsenal to do what they need to do to get this deal over the line. But if they don't offer that, if they don't offer whatever the board's going to accept, they're telling us it's 100 million. They might accept a little bit less. If they don't meet that, then Man City will gazump them, and it will only be their own fault. We saw the same thing with Suarez when he was at Liverpool. They offered £1 over his £40 million or £45 million release clause, and he got rebuffed, and they ended up at Barcelona. So if it happens, it's not like they've not been warned before. It's their own fault. Declan Rice has had a little bit of a come and get me plea to Arsenal. His team have been leaking like a rusty old tap since the end of the season that he only wants Arsenal. Fundamentally, he doesn't only want Arsenal. He would prefer to stay in London because that's where his family is. He doesn't really have a preference in terms of it's based off of Arteta. Because if he's choosing Arteta over Pep, that's the dumbest decision I could ever think of. Pep is the best manager in arguably the history of football. Between him and Sir Alex Ferguson, there's probably the only real argument you can have as to who was better. And there was different times, so you can't really have a solid debate about it because of that. So the stuff you see about him choosing Arteta over Pep or Arteta sold him the dream is completely false. My belief is that he said he prefers to stay in London because it's where his family are. If he turns down Man City, and they're offering the same money and everything as Arsenal, that's because he wants to stay in London. He's not saying he'd only move to Arsenal, because if he said that, then I think West Ham would have offered him a new contract this summer. It's also, you're pigeonholing yourself and you're screwing the club. For a player that turns around and says he loves the club, now I'm not disputing the things Declan Rice has done for the club. I'm not disputing his integrity. But one thing I will say is that he says that he loves the club. He said that he loves the fans. He loves this. He loves that. He's not really done much to show us that in this whole transfer debacle. Let's call it that. If you look at Jack Grealish is an Aston Villa fan. He grew up a Villa fan. He is and breathes Aston Villa. He signed a new contract with a £100 million release clause, knowing that if someone meets that, he's off. Declan Rice should have done that as well. His value last season was 100 million when we offered him that contract. It would have been the sum in the release clause. It would have been around about 90 to 100 million. He rejected that. Maybe it wasn't ever on the table to have a release clause in there, which seems stupid because then we're guaranteed the money. I don't understand why we would turn around and be like, next season you can go if you meet our valuation and do a gentleman's agreement with that, and then say no to a release clause in his contract because it's the same thing. I don't fully understand why that wasn't ever agreed, and the only reason I can think of is because Declan Rice didn't want the release clause. He didn't believe that a team would pay 100 million or 90 million or whatever it would have been for a defensive midfielder, which essentially is what he is. He's more of a number 6 in a box. I say defensive midfielder or number 6. He's a hybrid player, like I keep saying. So I think he probably didn't want a release clause in his contract. So actions speak louder than words, and at the minute, all we're hearing is leaks here and there about him wanting to go Arsenal, Man City. Not. What was the word? What was it? The wording that I read. It was Man City hadn't convinced him or something like that. And I'm like, how can Man City, who are just treble winners, how are they unconvincing in any sense? The fact they're offering you a contract or telling you that they want you is enough for any player in the world. If Man City come out and say we want you, there's very few clubs that can dissuade that. But it's barbaric to think that apparently he's choosing Arsenal over City for anything other than proximity to where he lives, which is weak. It's weak. And yes, I understand the argument of he wants to build something, he wants to go down as a legend with Arsenal potentially and helping them rebuild the club, but it's a risk. There is no guarantees with Arsenal, none whatsoever. Like I've said and I'll keep saying, they are way off Man City. I know it was close this season, but Man City weren't at their best for most of the season. And when they were, they blew the league away. They went 15 game winning run towards the end of the season. Or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but when they started playing, it was never really in doubt. And then Arsenal, the wheels came off later than what I thought. I thought they'd come off earlier. I even started to believe they'd win the league at the point where they drew with us. But it's an odd one. I can't quite get my head around it. If that is the case, if he is saying he'd rather Arsenal, other than it just being close to his house, he doesn't have to move. It's a weird one. But anyway, I've said it so many times. I don't want to talk about Declan Rice constantly, which is why there's been a big gap between our last video and this one. I wanted to bring you some more information, but there isn't much coming out. There's not much going on, and that's because of the time of the year it is. It's still June. You very rarely see much movement in the early weeks of the transfer window because the players and the board and the managers and the coaching team are all away on holiday. Rightly so, we've had a hard season. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing a lot of scraps. We're scrounging around the bottom of the pool looking for any little leftovers to bring you information. But there are a few things that I think have some weight, and we're going to talk about them now. So Amadou Onana, the Everton powerhouse who rejected us last summer for Everton. He said he preferred the Frank Lampard project. That worked out really well for you, Onana. Really, really well. But he's come out now and said he'd be happy to join West Ham. Now, I am not opposed to this. He's had a season in the Premier League, so it's not an unknown quantity. What I've seen of him, he looks very, very decent. He could do a job in there. It's all about the money. Money is everything here. And if they're demanding 40, 50 million, get lost. I'm not paying that for him. That's half of our budget gone on one player that I don't think's any better than Souček. I saw a statistics table comparing to yesterday. I can't remember who tweeted it, but I saw it, and Souček's better in pretty much every aspect apart from pass completion, which is Souček's biggest weakness, which I've said a million times. He can't pass the ball. So Onana's there, and I think the links with him are probably true. Moyes likes him. He wanted him last summer. I could see this deal potentially having a lot of legs, so I'd keep an eye on that one. It's all about whether Onana wants to push through the move or really show us that he wants to come to us, because he was dropped towards the end of last season as well. I don't think Sean Dyche really fancies him, although it seems a bit odd for me because I thought he'd be a perfect Dyche type of player. But anyway, Onana is one that's definitely got some legs. Another one that I saw big links to in the last couple of days is Denis Zakaria. He was on loan at Chelsea, and he's now gone back to Juve. He's not wanted at Juve. We're holding talks with his representatives at Juve to try and hash out some kind of deal. The fees to be believed around 25 to 30 million euros. Now, this is something that I think we should 100% pursue. Denis Zakaria looked very decent when he played, although it was in a struggling Chelsea team. He is a defensive midfielder, an out-and-out defensive midfielder. If you were to bring in Zakaria, let's say Ward-Prowse, because let's be honest, we're probably going to get Ward-Prowse. I'm not even talking about him in this video, but I can see that happening. I'll talk about him a little bit actually. But say we get Zakaria, Ward-Prowse and Paquetá in that midfield. I think that's a cohesive midfield three that could definitely work. Definitely cause a lot of problems, and we still pose the massive aerial threat that Souček gives us. Souček can swap in and out with Ward-Prowse and potentially Zakaria. And I think that would be something that we could definitely do. If we can get James Ward-Prowse for what the rumblings and whispers are saying, we can get him for about 30-35 million, which I still think is a bit too much. But for someone like James Ward-Prowse and his set-piece delivery and his professional nous and Premier League know-how, I think it's a good deal. And then Zakaria for 25 to 30 million euros, that seems like a very good couple pieces of business there for me. And then the last one we're going to talk about quickly, we talk about him a lot, is Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes, with front runners for his signature, in that we've held talks with Leicester. They're willing to sell him. The fees that believed to be around 35 to 40 million pounds, probably worth it. Been relegated, they're still holding value with these players, but they have just said to Tottenham that they could have James Maddison for a reduced price. So they were originally asking for 50 for James Ward-Prowse. They're now saying they take 40 to 45. So they've already dropped their asking price on James Maddison because Tottenham were threatening to walk away. We can't really afford to walk away from this Barnes deal because his pace is something we've needed for years, and he gives us Premier League experience. He's played at the highest level. He's played in Europe. He's won FA Cups, or a FA Cup. He's played under decent managers. I think it's a no-brainer. I think you have to go out and get Harvey Barnes. It's just, you have to at least be in the race for him. And now there's a couple of free transfers that we're linked with as well. I saw today, out of nowhere actually, Adama Traore is someone who's piquing interest from some sources at West Ham. No-brainer. Said it before, said it in my previous video. If you go back to it and look at the transfer rumour one, it's a no-brainer. He's free. He's absolutely rapid, and yes, he can be unbelievably bad and unbelievably good. But when he's unbelievably good, he's unplayable. And like I said, I think he could do a similar role to what Antonio does. I really do. Antonio's not good at finishing. Neither is Traore. But he's big, strong, powerful, and hard to get a hold of, which is what Antonio is. So there's that. There was that in the paper today. And the last one we're going to talk about today is Jesse Lingard. Now, Jesse Lingard is on a free. He is free. He's been released from Nottingham Forest, and he's got no club. Emotions aside, after last season and taking us on a ride, would you offer him a year's contract? I've been thinking about this because I saw it a couple of days ago. I can't remember where I saw it, that we were considering offering him a contract. Now, He did hurt a lot of West Ham fans last year with his antics around signing for Forest. It was all about the money. Like, let's not beat around the bush. It was all about the money. He went for money. I'd sit down with him personally, as our reps probably will, and I'd ask him if he wants to come. If he wants to come, I'd offer him a contract. But if he turns around and says something, I'm going to keep my options open, it means he's bending over for the Saudi league. He's waiting for another paycheck, and he'll probably go off there. In all likelihood, he'll probably end up in the Saudi league because they'll offer him something. Let's be honest, he's out of contract and he's clearly only interested in the money at this point in his career. But he was very, very good for us. Now, I'm not saying he'd be the same player if we got him again, but the reason he was so good for us, and I only realised this maybe a week ago, is because the reason he was good for us and not at Man United and not at Forest is because when he played for Man United, he had to play against low blocks constantly. Very few teams play against West Ham with a low block. So that allows someone like Jesse Lingard to play in that hole and have all kinds of freedom and space, which is what he thrived in. So he can't go to a top team because he hasn't got the ability to create the space if it isn't there. He loves to have the space, and then he works wonders in it, which is what he did for us. And the reason it didn't work at Forest is because Morgan Gibbs-White is much better at creating space than he is, so therefore it leaves no space for Lingard to be in. So would you take Jesse Lingard? That should probably have been my question for today, but I personally would. I think he'd be a decent player to have around the squad. He's been around winning players. He's been around decent teams. Now, that's emotions aside. If you asked me 3 months ago, I'd have been like, hell no. But our squad's going to be thin next season. We don't have many leaders in it. We don't have any real winners in there apart from the players that won with us last season. So it seems to me like a win-win if we were to offer him a short-term deal. But anyway, that's it for today. City bid rejected. Arsenal's third bid due in any minute. Anana, Zakaria, Barnes, all open links, all open season really. You'll start to see movement on the transfers in the next couple of weeks. Probably the first 2 weeks of July is when we start to see things moving, both in and out. Who knows when Declan Rice is going to go, but keep watching the space. I will put together a full scout report on some different players that I've not spoken about who could maybe fill the Declan Rice void. I'm working on it now. I'm trying to get all sorts of data together. So keep an eye out for that one. It'll be a very good watch. But until the next one, guys, come on you Irons.